We have just over 3 weeks until Election Day. So let's start with the good news. People are voting across the country. The Harris campaign has far more money than Trump, a far better organization. She and her running mate, Tim Walz, have been all over the media for the last week and have more plans in the weeks ahead. And right now, she has two incredibly popular former presidents on the trail for her. Former President Bill Clinton is campaigning for Harris in Georgia today. Former President Barack Obama was in Pennsylvania and will continue campaigning for Harris in Arizona and Nevada this week. And the vice president herself is campaigning in North Carolina today ahead of stops across the Midwest in the coming days. And we could hear from Harris live this hour. If we do, we'll bring that to you. We're going to watch it very closely. The point is this. The Harris-Walz team, they're pulling out all the stops. They have all the people out there. They have tons of money. They have an amazing organization. That's all good news. Now, here is the absolutely mind-bending part we have to just acknowledge in this moment. Somehow this race is extremely close. A new national poll out just this morning from NBC News shows the candidates tied at 48% each. And look, as I've told you many times before, I don't put a lot of stock, neither do national campaigns, neither does the Harris-Walz campaign, into national poll numbers. What I am watching more, what they are watching more, what you should watch more closely are the battleground states. And they're very, very close across the board, too. So if you're sitting on your couch right now wondering, how on earth could this race be tied? Believe me, you're not alone. That is probably the most common question I get everywhere. Now, as imperfect as polling can be, and it is imperfect, there are some interesting clues in the numbers that may be tough to hear, but are important to talk about and be clear-eyed about right now, given the stakes of this election, how close it is. Because right now, Harris has lower than expected support among Latino voters and among another key Democratic voting bloc, Black men. And what may feel even more perplexing to you about where the race stands is that this race is not happening in a vacuum or in normal times between two candidates running a normal race, talking about differences on policy issues. It's happening between a well-qualified sitting vice president who speaks very passionately about fighting for the rights of Americans and, say, protecting the Constitution, and another guy who spent the week generating headlines that at any other time in American politics would have been disqualifying, each of them. I mean, Trump continued to lie about the disaster responses to Hurricanes Helene and Milton to the detriment of the people in those states. And just last night, he threatened to actually do what he falsely accused the Biden administration of doing, denying disaster relief to a state that needs it for political purposes. Last night, he also said a female heckler at his rally should, quote, get the hell knocked out of her. That's literally his words. This week, he also continued to demonize migrants, even suggesting that they are genetically predisposed to violence. And if that all wasn't enough, everyone, in a new book from legendary reporter Bob Woodward that also came out this week, we learned that Trump's own former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff called Trump a fascist to the core. And honestly, it's not difficult to see why General Milley believes that, given the completely apocalyptic language Trump is using to frame the race.
It's the enemy from within, all the scum that we have to deal with that hate our country. That's a bigger enemy than China and Russia. You cannot get into a hospital, by the way, because the migrants have all of the beds. You cannot get into a hospital. You cannot get your kids into a school because there are migrants there that don't even speak the language. It's unbelievable. They're giving, because of Biden and Kamala, they're giving precedence over your children.
We will defend our civilization. We will not be conquered. We will not be occupied. We will not be invaded. We will reclaim our sovereignty. We will reclaim our nation. And I will give back your freedom and give back your life.
I mean, all of that is insane. But if you were the Harris campaign, how exactly do you run against a guy with 3 weeks left whose closing argument is focused on amping up his own violent and bigoted rhetoric? Someone who avoids all forms of traditional accountability in campaigns, whether it is, of course, speaking in facts or releasing his medical records or even participating in a debate so people can see the contrast between the candidates. What do you do about that? Well, as longtime Democratic strategist James Carville said this week, quote, time is short, really short. No kidding. It's just 3 weeks left. They need to be more aggressive. They don't strike me as having any kind of killer instinct. They let one fat pitch after another go by. I'm scared to death. They have to hit hard pronto. Well, you may or may not agree with that, and that's okay. We're going to talk about it. But it must have been music to Carville's ears when he heard Harris absolutely tee off on Trump just yesterday.
It is clear to me that he and his team do not want the American people to really see what it is that he is doing and whether or not he actually is fit to do the job of being president of the United States. He is unfit for office. He talks at his rallies about fictional characters. He constantly is in a state of grievance about himself. He has no plans for the American people, and then he just makes things up on a full-time basis. I invite the public to watch his rallies and be the decision maker on his acuity. And you will see in his rallies how he goes off on tangents, how he is not focused on the needs of the American people with solutions to the issues that concern them the most.
Joining me now is legendary Democratic strategist James Carville. A new documentary about his life in politics called Winning is Everything Stupid just began its theatrical run in New York City. And the man never, ever holds back. By the way, James, I'm so happy to see you. I've been watching the documentary. I know we grew up in different moments of politics, but it is such a reminder to me of how great politics is and how important it is out there. I really have enjoyed it. But that aside, we got to talk about what's happening right now. So I just showed a clip from Harris. It was pretty tough what she said yesterday. You've said you want to see more of that or things like that. What do you think of what she said, and what do you want to see more of?
I liked it a lot. Just think of what we learned in the last 48 hours. We had General Flynn say that the gates of hell are going to rain on Trump's enemies when he wins. We had General Milley say that he's a fascist to his core. We heard Trump on Fox this morning said he was going to use the military to round up his political enemies. Trump has announced that he will be giving a speech at Madison Square Garden on October the 27th. Please Google Madison Square Garden, February the 10th, 1939, and see what happened there. They are telling you exactly what they're going to do. They're telling you we're going to institute a fascist regime, and the press and all the Alan Dershowitz wannabes out there. But James, she should have gone to the Al Smith dinner, really. She doesn't do enough long-form interviews. Now, I'm so sick of these people. The entire Constitution is in jeopardy. The Supreme Court and Clarence Thomas have totally green-lighted the idea that you could use the military to round up your political enemies. And the whole, I am fair and more truth-teller than anybody else, caucus is making a giant fool of itself right now.
We love the truth-telling. Listen, I don't think anybody should go to the Al Smith dinner ever, so I'm happy to go to on the record on that one. But I do want to play. You just mentioned this Fox clip from this morning, and I think it's so important for people to see what Trump is saying. People may not have seen this, so let's just play it just to make sure people see it.
In terms of Election Day, I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military, because they can't let that happen.
I mean, he's essentially, to your point, saying the military should be used. And this is, again, he's telling us what he wants to do. This is not us making it up. But the thing I wanted to ask you about, I mean, you know better than anybody, there are kind of seasons in campaigns and messaging. And you and I talked this summer, I remember, when it was kind of in the stage post the Harris taking over the nomination, right around when Walz was picked, where there was this shift to painting Trump and his acolytes as weird, right? Not scaring people. But now it seems like you're saying we should go back to scaring people because that's what they need to hear. Is that what they need in this moment? Or how do you explain the shift, do you think?
Well, yeah, first of all, my wife and I spoke at the Al Smith, I think 2010, so
well, that's okay.
Really good people, but that's okay.
They're good people, but candidates don't need to do it a few weeks before the election.
I did not realize when I said that that he would actually go on television and say, I'm going to use the military to round up my political enemies. When I said that, General Flynn, who's going to be very senior in this administration, didn't say that the gates of hell will rain on my political enemies. When I said that, I didn't know that he was going to schedule a rally at Madison Square Garden to mimic the Nazi rally of 10 February 1939. So we have, they're telling you. And by the way, if they win, they're going to correctly say, we told you in the election what we were going to do, and you voted for us. You have green-lighted the whole thing. And if we don't tell people about that, if these young black men, how do you think they're going to do if you're a young black male and Trump-inspired army roundup of people? How well do you think you're going to do in that? You think you got nothing to lose? How about looking at American history for one time and see what can happen here? And they are telling you, we're not making this up. This is not, we can be fact-checked by anybody. They have promised military roundup. They've promised the gates of hell will rain on the enemies. The Supreme Court has green-lighted it. They were asked a question, if a Navy SEAL is ordered to assassinate a political enemy, the president can't be, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of his job. They are telling you they're doing all of this. Pay attention to them right now. Please, they're telling you.